Mr. President, here we are with an intent to have an amendment that's supposed to solve all the problems of this legislation, and we had it announced earlier this morning, and we hadn't seen it yet. And so we're now here. Earlier today, we thought we had an agreement to have as many as a half a dozen votes tonight. So we had some today. We're going to have some more tonight. We've only had 9 votes on this legislation as of today. This is really odd. And so we haven't seen this bill. We don't know what's in it. Everything has been stopped, waiting on some agreement, as Senator Schumer said, among the allies. He said they're showing the bill to allies. Apparently hadn't shown it to Senator Lee, hadn't shown it to me. So the allies of the Gang of 8 are going through the bill. I don't know if they're going to have Nebraska kickbacks in it or Cornhusker kickbacks or whatever else they're going to put in it to get somebody's vote on it. I hope that's not where we're going. But what I'm concerned about, having been around here a few years now, is that we'll have a vote on cloture on this amendment. They're going to file the amendment, immediately file cloture apparently, and then have that vote early next week, and then have a couple of more votes. And the next thing you know, we're at final passage and no amendments have been allowed of significance to occur. I have a number of amendments. The House has done a really good job in working on the interior enforcement weaknesses of our current law. They've put together some good language. I've taken a lot of it and put it into an amendment. I'd like to have a vote on that, and we ought to talk about it, because there's some feeling around here that the only thing that matters is the border. But that's not so. 40% of the illegal entries into America today come by visa overstays, and that's not dealt with at all or any significant way that I'm aware of in this new amendment, which we haven't seen. So I'm worried about this whole process. American people deserve an open process. It was promised that. We had, how many amendments we had in committee, Senator Lee? Lots of them. But we only had 9 now, and we lost a group that we were going to have today, and we can't tell from our discussions with Senator Reid and others if there'll be any more amendments next week. Because I guess the powers that be, the masters of the universe, have all gotten together and they've decided this. They've decided that everything is fixed by Hoeven Corker. And we'll just pass that amendment and nobody else will be heard. But that amendment, from what I read in the papers about it, in general, doesn't fix anything like the loopholes and weaknesses of the legislation. Senator Lee, I appreciate your eloquence on this issue, but I did want to share that I feel like that something is going awry in the open, debatable process that we thought we were going to have for a day or two that seemed to have jumped off the tracks completely.
It does indeed. And, you know, I was disappointed by the fact that in Judiciary Committee, on which you and I both serve, we had a lot of amendments. I don't remember exactly how many votes we had in committee, but it was in the dozens, if not scores. And we had extensive discussion. Now, not all the votes turned out the way that you and I wanted them to. But the important thing is we had a lot of discussion. We had on-the-record debate. We had amendments proposed and discussed and debated. And that's not how it's happened this time. In my understanding, I wasn't here, unlike my friend from Alabama, in 2007, the last time we had a comparable discussion of a bill like this one. But my understanding is that there were 50-something, perhaps 53 amendments that were debated, discussed, and received votes in 2007. My understanding this time around is that we've had 9 votes and maybe 2 or 3 that were taken by voice vote. Now, that's not enough. It's certainly not enough when you're talking about a bill that's more than 1,000 pages long. A bill that is going to affect many millions of Americans, and it's going to do so for many generations to come. The American people deserve more than this. They deserve more than just debate and discussion, roll call votes that can be measured in the single digits. They call this the greatest deliberative legislative body in the world, and yet we make a mockery of that description when we do things like this, when we allow a 1,000-page bill to be rammed through in a matter of days with only a small handful of amendments debated, discussed, and amended. So through the chair, I'd like to ask my friend and my distinguished colleague from Alabama whether he has seen anything like this in his career, whether this is something that I should anticipate moving forward as I look forward to my years in the Senate. Is this something that I should expect on a regular basis with legislation like this, of this complexity, of this level of importance? Is this something that is just par for the course?
I'm afraid it's becoming par for the course. I remember we had a bill, bankruptcy bill, a fourth of this in size. I think it was on the floor 3 weeks, and we had maybe nearly 100 amendments. And a lot of people, everybody had their chance to speak, and we ended up passing the bill with well over 80 votes. But the point is that in this new mood in the Senate, we have a situation in which the majority leader too often fills the tree and controls even the amendments that are brought up. And in fact, as you know, do you think it odd as a new member to the Senate and a student of law and Washington governmental processes, isn't it odd that a senator can't come to the floor and offer an amendment without seeking permission of the majority leader, and he says, no, I won't take your amendment, I'll only take this amendment? Does that strike you as contrary to what your understanding of as to how the Senate should operate historically?
Yes, in fact, I find it appalling. I find it repugnant to the system of government under which we're supposed to be operating. I find it even repugnant to Article 6 of the Constitution, which makes clear that there's one kind of constitutional amendment that is never appropriate. You can't amend the Constitution to deny any state its equal representation in the Senate. And if at any moment we end up with a situation in which we have second-class senators, senators that may submit and propose for debate and discussion and a vote an amendment, if we have to go to the majority leader and say, Mother, may I, then perhaps we've lost something. Perhaps we've lost the environment in which each of the states were supposed to receive equal representation. It also seems to me to take on a certain character, a certain banana republic quality, that we're asked to vote on legislation in many circumstances just hours or even minutes after we've received it. We take on a certain rubber stamp quality when we do that. I remember a few months ago, in connection with the fiscal cliff debate, as we approached the fiscal cliff on New Year's Eve, we were told by our respective leaders, just wait, something's coming. Go back to your offices, watch your televisions, play with your toys, do whatever it is that you do, but, be good senators, run along and stay out of trouble. We're taking care of this. We'll send you legislation as soon as we're ready. Well, at 1:36 a.m., we received an email, and attached to that email was a 153-page document. That was the bill that we would be voting on. That bill was one that we would be called to vote on exactly 6 minutes later at 1:42 a.m. So to my utter astonishment and dismay, senators flocked into this room and with very, very little objection ended up passing that legislation overwhelmingly. This is just one of many examples I can point to in the 2.5 years since I've been here, when members have been asked to vote and did in fact vote enthusiastically, willingly, and hardly without a whimper of objection to legislation that they had never seen, to legislation that they were familiar with only to the extent that it had been summarized for them. Now, that brings us back to this legislation here. We've had this in front of us in one form or another for the last couple of months. But for a long time before we even had it, What we had was a summary of this. We had a series of bullet points. Those bullet points were very favorable, and for a long time the bullet points were all we had. The bullet points, I exaggerate slightly to prove a point, but they read something like this. Is this bill outstanding? Yes. Will this bill solve all of our immigration problems? Absolutely. Is there anything wrong with this bill? Heavens no. That's how the bullet points read, and it was on that basis that groups around the country and some members even of our own body decided that they would vote for Senate Bill 744 even before Senate Bill 744 even existed. We had groups across the country, some even in my home state, that came out strongly in favor of the yet-to-be-released Gang of Eight bill, saying we're going to vote for it, and we're going to support it. And anyone who doesn't vote for it in the United States Senate is a backward fool. Well, they hadn't read it. They couldn't have read it because the bill didn't yet exist. Now, in some respects, what happened with this is very similar to what we're now facing with the yet-to-be-released Corker Amendment. I haven't seen it, but I'll tell you what I have seen. I've seen a set of very brief bullet points about the Corker Amendment. And the bullet points read something like this. Is this amendment outstanding? Yes. Will this amendment solve our border security problems? Absolutely. Is there any problem presented by this amendment? Absolutely not. So I say to my friend from Alabama, if this is what I can expect in my career in the United States Senate, I am a little bit troubled. But I would ask my friend from Alabama if there's anything we can do about this, if there's any way we can right this ship, if there's any way we can turn this around, this disturbing trend, separate and apart from the policies underlying this bill. Is there anything we can do to make this a real legislative body and not a rubber stamp? The kind of legislative body that actually does debate and discuss things. Because you don't really have a true deliberative legislative body unless you have enough time to debate things before we vote on them, to where the members can actually read them before they come up.
Yes, we can do that if we just follow the traditional rules of the Senate. And you're exactly right. Here we are being told that this legislation, this 1,000 pages, is all decided because somebody has got a bill, an amendment somewhere that nobody's seen, at least nobody that has any skepticism about it has seen, and that's going to solve all the problems. It's just rather remarkable. And on the fundamental question you raised about the Senate, I do believe, Senator Lee, that we need to begin to appeal across party lines and think more clearly about what's happening here. I talked with one of the great historians of the Senate, somebody I've known, and he's been here, worked on the floor, and he's written a book about it. And he said he hated to say it, but it's kind of getting like the old Russian Soviet Duma, where a group of people met in secret and put out the word, and then they all went and voted 990 to 10 for whatever it was a little group decided. And I'm worried that that has too much relevance to what's been happening here. I really do. A United States Senator, as you said, is equal to any other senator. The Majority Leader has power of first recognition, but it was never intended that the Majority Leader should say, you can't get your amendment, Senator from Alabama, only the one from Maine can get their amendment, and actually be able to execute that. It's just rather stunning, and that was not the way it was when I came. And this filling the tree process started maybe not long after I came, and both parties have used it, but it's now gone to an extent to which we've never seen before and adversely impacts the whole Senate. Are valuable in that they point out weaknesses in legislation and they provide a fix for that weakness. And I think why would we want to deny people the right to make a piece of legislation better?